I'm Tim, the Brand Weaver, and this is Branding for Breweries, the podcast that helps you grow your brewery, build a better brand, and connect with more drinkers. Each week, I'm joined by the brightest minds in the beer world, sharing practical tips to help your brewery stand out and sell more beer. Let's get stuck in. What up, 24-hour party people? 'Tis I, Tim the Brand Weaver, and you are listening to Branding for Breweries. Quick question, is anyone sick of that intro now? Because that's the thing I just keep on saying, and I know it's already been repeated. I maybe need to change it up in the new year. Anyway, nonetheless, thank you everyone for dialing in, for joining, for listening now, or indeed in the future, or potentially the past, if that works, if I were talking from the future. But let's not overcomplicate things. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am joined by the phenomenal Roger T, Managing Director of Kirkstall Brewery, previous co-owner of Mash Gang, to talk about an interesting topic that no one's really come onto the show to chat about before, and that is the business behind the brand. Because Roger and I have spoken in the background, we've been chatting about what he's doing over at Kirkstall, what he helped with at Mash Gang, and I was like, there is so much we need to unpack here. But that's enough of me rabbiting on. Let's bring Roger into the chat. Let's have a good old chinwag, and let's hope that Roger can shine some light on the business aspect of the brand. Everyone, welcome to the stage, Mr. Roger.
Hello.
Morning, mate. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you? Try to mirror your energy there. No one can match it, though.
Dude, it's the energy, and as I said, it is the aggressive amount of espresso that I pumped into my veins this morning. So if I just start to dip quite rapidly afterwards, I'm just handing over to you, man. Okay, you got
it. Pick up, yeah.
Yeah, wicked. Roger, for those people who don't know who you are, what your history has been, beyond what I just said in that intro, would you mind giving your own version of your backstory, please, mate?
Yeah, okay. I am an accountant by trade. As far as accountants go, I'm on the more fun end, but that's not a high end of fun anyway. So yeah, that's kind of where I spent most of my early career, doing sort of various finance roles, worked my way through various industries, and got myself to being sort of a number one in finance. I always had this sort of passion for craft beer, from sort of 2012 onwards. Did a bit of brewing a bucket at uni as well to get me into that, at the start of the craze. But I always wanted to be part of the beer scene, and really work in a brewery, but it was never really happening for me. And then somehow, in ways that I'm sure we'll delve into in this, I fell into being a part of Mash Gang, and part of that scene. Had the best time doing that, and then we sold, and then I was out of the scene then, but it was pretty short-lived. And then I found myself with the opportunity to join Kirkstall as managing director, and stepping away from that sort of finance role that I had held, but I'd always craved to be that managing director, leader at the top sort of role. So that's what I'm doing now. I am 4 or 5 months into that, so still pretty early, but really, really glad to be back in the scene, and loving it so far. Yeah.
Amazing. It's an exciting journey, and 2 very different brands as well, like going Mash Gang to Kirkstall. There's a lot of nuance between the 2, I should imagine, that we need to unpack between that.
Yeah, there is a lot of difference between them.
So I'm just trying to think, like, are you the first managing director I've had on the show beyond marketing and head of brand? But the reason is because it is that structure piece that you brought to Mash Gang, and I assume that's what you're trying to bring to Kirkstall as well. But my big worry is, like, does structure come at the cost of creativity? Like, do you have to lock stuff in where you can't be that wild, bold, creative brand anymore? Or can you, find that balance? Roger, tell me, is it possible?
I have to say yes, because otherwise, I'm out of a job, I think. I think you're right, it's 2 very different businesses where, between Kirkstall and Mash Gang. Kirkstall is a well-established business that's been going on for a number of years and has grown to quite a large level really in the UK, whereas Mash Gang was a startup business, highly creative, high growth, very rough around the edges. And there's 2 different treatments for that, but I think both are the same, that actually you can really harness and leverage your creativity with some structure. I think growth in any business brings a level of complexity, whether we like it or not. And in an ideal world, we keep our businesses as simple as possible. But the reality is, the more you do, the more complexity there's going to be. The more complexity that you get as well, in my opinion, the more time you spend fighting fires until you have that structure in place. So if I give an example of, I don't know, someone working in a design team, like a designer or a brand manager or anything, if you spend all your time in a business which doesn't have the structure to prioritize tasks or anything like that, for example, and you have this long laundry list of things that you have to do, and more people coming to your desk and throwing more stuff at you, and you don't know which one to prioritize because you're not sat at the top of the business and no one else around you is telling you what to prioritize, how can you possibly be at your creative best and have the headspace to deal with everything if actually all that's happening is your list is getting longer and no one's telling you what you need to spend the most amount of time on? I think that's a really good example of where structure is needed. So maybe a structure that you put in there would be, okay, there's now a request system for if you then want some design work doing. This, it works probably more in a larger brewery, but it can be applicable in any brewery, especially if you're small and you have an external design agency. They'll probably be asking for this sort of thing anyway. You have to then it gets triaged. So it says, right, well, how much of a priority is this? And then it gets put in an order in your list, and you know what you're attacking first. And it's saying, right, I can spend this much time on this because I know this has to be done by this time, and this is the highest importance. So it's not introducing like loads and loads of red tape and bureaucracy. It's introducing simple and light structures. And when I started at Kirkstall, I'm sure James, our design lead, won't mind me saying this, but actually, I kind of got brought up to the front in like a town hall situation in front of people. It's made clear that I'm here to try and introduce a bit more structure because that's what I do, because I'm a boring accountant and that's what I love, right? But everyone needs boring accountants, and it'll help us harness the growth that we've experienced over the last few years in particular, and help us kick forwards. And one question that came was from James, our designer, saying, when you say structure, what exactly does that mean? But I'd like to think, that actually that's something that has been good for us, really, and it's something we're still working on. But I think people are responding well so far to just a bit more of the structure that we are putting in, so we do start acting like a bit more of a developed and grown up business that we really are at Kirkstall now.
Where do you think that kind of lack of structure comes from? Because if you don't put it in place, if you don't know to put it in place, it doesn't happen. But have you spotted in the past, or when chatting with other breweries, where it just kind of, it's this organic beast that just grows so many tendrils, you're like, oh my god, where do we begin?
Yeah, I think, you see it a lot in businesses that have really grown a lot over quite a short space of time. And you have, again, a lot of businesses where you've sort of just added a lot of people into the mix as well to keep up with the growth, but never really defined what people are doing as well. And I think that can be a situation where you get this a lot, and it's not exactly clear who's making decisions or something, or it's not clear who's really reporting into who, or what everyone's actual roles sort of entail. And you do get that, as businesses grow, and your chaos is good. You've got to harness the chaos, because if there's no chaos, you're probably not growing. And if that's what you want your business to be doing and you're not doing, that's obviously a problem. So chaos, I always say, is good in business. And, I've worked in a lot of very chaotic businesses where we've been growing a lot. And that's just like part of it, but it's about how do you then harness that? And, in a chaotic and high growth situation, people do double up and do stuff that's not really theirs as well. Like that's a pretty key bit of it, really. And that's how, you rely on teams that are going to go the extra mile to get you to where you need to be. And you don't want to lose that equally. You don't want to put such a tight structure in place that someone cannot do something to help a business if it's not within their remit. Because especially in the brewing world, few people have anywhere near enough profitability to get someone to do everything that they need. I think everyone in the industry will be feeling that, especially over the last year or so as well, just how expensive it is to recruit people now as well. So you do need people to be willing to step out and help in other areas. But I think it's, again, just using this structure word again, having the structure to allow people to step into those areas, but having the structure to allow the creativity that is needed for businesses to grow as well. And I think that's the key thing that I've really identified is the best businesses have that real creative flair in them, but it's harnessed and managed.
And so this idea of structure, is there, I would assume at the start is the prime time to add structure because it's easier, but let's just assume that ship has sailed. Kirkstall has many, many years. Is there a prime time, or is there a certain point in a business life when it identifies itself as like, oh, we need a step change here, we need to bring structure into the business?
Yeah, I mean, Kirkstall had structure before, at least, which before I joined, which was great. It wasn't like it was just this, loose ship sailing away in the night, sort of with rudderless ship. That wasn't the case. So that, I was very fortunate in that. But I have seen businesses that, don't have anything like that. And I guess it's never too late to start, but it does become more difficult the more adrift the business becomes, right? Because cultures set in as well, then, don't they? And cultures are really, really hard to turn around. If your culture is we like, or the culture is whether we like it or not, there is no structure here whatsoever, and it's just every person for themselves, and everyone's a loose cannon and just doing what they think is best and not what the consensus of the business thinks is best. And that's, I mean, those businesses probably don't last a great deal of time anyway, but you can get businesses that exist like that, and they've just had such a great product or whatever that they've just exploded and they don't really know what to do with it. You still can fix it. It just takes longer. And I think, it takes a certain type of person to endure that pain as well. I wouldn't want to touch, like, for sure, like, because it'd just be, beyond the stress levels required. But, I think some people specialize in going in and turning businesses around, don't they?
Being the fixer. As long as they've got that soundtrack, that kind of like 80s funk soundtrack.
That's right. Yeah. You put Eye of a Tiger on and just go for it.
Just embrace it. So, like, if we take a hypothetical brewery that they kind of go, well, it was spawned on passion and we love creating the beer and we'd love to do a bit more. We'd love to grow. Have you got any like key things where you're like, okay, if you need to get some structure around this, creativity, brand marketing has got to be one of them. But what are like the top areas you would encourage brewery owners and people within breweries to be looking at when it comes to forming these structures?
Yeah, well, I think defining, I think you've got to have a definition of where you want to go as well. I think you've got to have a sort of a mission of what it is that you're trying to achieve. So you're clear. I think having a designated leadership team that can keep the consistent approach to that is key, because consistency is so key with brand, as it is with everything in business. So you need to define where you're going, and then you need to have a team of people, or even if it's a small business, fine, just one person, but one person who is clear on what that sort of North Star is for the brand and the company, and keeps everyone on that track, and is monitoring and ensuring that is where sort of the business is traveling. It needs focus, basically. But you need to, if you're this really passionate and creative business, you can't lose what the business is about as well. You can't just, I wouldn't recommend anyone just overnight changes what a business is. It's hard. I don't think it really works that way. I think you've got to stay true to what the business has become and what has led the business to get to where it is. And that, like you say, like passion, you really don't want to trade passion for much in your business. You kind of need it. You need people to really believe in it. So you don't want to change too much, but I think it is really just having at least one or a group of people that are designated to understand what the mission of the business is. Spread that word so everyone in the business ideally knows what it is as well, but at least I hate using the word controls because it sounds like it's not creative, and it's obviously not, but controls and processes at a light level that will allow people to travel in the same direction.
That makes sense. Because does that mean, like, so you've got I love the North Star reference because I use that a lot as well. But you've got your North Star, you've got your singular or team who know at the very, very top what that means. But then is it a case of going for those people below? It's like, right, but this is your responsibility in your department to help us get there. How are you going to do it? It's like you federate out how you get to that North Star. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think people have to feel like they're contributing as well to how they want to get to it. So rather than tell people how to do it, I like people to feed in how they like to do it. So I think it's easier as you bring newer people into the business, because those people, you can kind of mold them into what you want to be, and you can induct them, and that becomes way more important as you start adding more people into your business. It's really easy to put something in place when there's like 5 of you, but if there's like 200 of you, it's harder to get everyone aligned, right? And like I think about I think visions and values session sound a bit wanky sometimes, but actually they are pretty useful. And I think I worked for this chain of opticians, and that was my first role out of practice into industry, and it was amazing. I learned how to run businesses during that, learned how to operate in a high growth and often chaotic business, but I got this really great exposure every day with the founder and CEO. And he was really big on visions and values and stuff like that. And he used to do a lot of mentoring with me. At times I'd be like, why the fuck do I need to know this? Like, this isn't, this is all pie in the sky stuff. But actually, and he would spend everyone who joined the business, and we had probably 150 people in the business at that time, but everyone in the business, anyone who joined or anyone who hadn't had a session before, would have a 2-hour vision and value session with him, and he would lead them. And it was so everyone understood exactly what his view of his business was and what the strategy was of the business. And maybe some people might say it was a little cult-like at times, maybe in terms of the way that you get people following, and understanding, and everyone was able to sort of almost recite what it was that was important for the business. But as I've sort of moved away from that business and moved further on in my career, I often find myself quoting things that he said that used to drive me insane, and think, oh God, that's where I am now. But I often find myself implementing things that he did as well, because he was such a great example of how to create a brand, but B, how you get people to follow that as well. And, we talk a lot about, we'll go on to this with Mash Gang, we used to say it's not a cult, it's a gang, but the more we said that, the more culty it became. People started to follow. So I think if you can get that, that's really great. But I've forgotten what the question was. I think I've just sort of deviated off on a point there.
No, it was about how you what areas of structure do you bring into a brand? But
Right, yeah.
like you say, and I completely agree with you, having visions, values, or brand pillars, or whatever you might want to call them, they come in different definitions. They only are useful if you continue to use them and continue to reference and measure against them, versus, like you say, just a PDF that's been stuck on a hard drive because it was a corporate process you had to do for team building.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think investment in people is a really big part of that. And it can feel costly to do that sometimes, but having people who have experience with investing in people really contributes to the culture, and that then contributes towards the consistency throughout the business. So we've hired a head of people and culture now, which is a role that's already paying dividends, because all of a sudden, we have a dedicated resource to making sure that people in the business, have someone they can turn to, who sort of owns the culture in the business and is really focusing on our people and doing what's right for our people to develop our people as well, which is a really, really big part of what we're trying to achieve as a business, be it brand consistency, message consistency, or general growth and achievement of the business.
Yeah, they all sit hand in hand, though. Like you say, it all drives towards that North Star, and it gets you to that point. Big shout out for anyone who is listening at the moment, and people are saying hi in the chat window. So hello, people. Thanks for joining us in. Coming back to the conversation, I know when we spoke offline, and you're in the throes of that kind of values, vision, direction setting with Kirkstall and what it means, and kind of pulling that back up or refining it and where it needs to be. But you use the term modern heritage.
Yeah.
Like, What does that mean in practice, though, for a brand like Kirkstall? Like, how do you define that?
Yeah, it's a term that I coin quite a lot, and it's something that I keep coming back to. For me, modern heritage. So a brand like Kirkstall, we have our roots quite deep in history, and we kind of lean into that quite a lot. So we talk about the abbey and the monks that were brewing there, back in the day, and we use some of their recipes now, and that's going back hundreds of years. And then Kirkstall was also, reborn as a brewery a bit later on, and then went away, and we've sort of brought it back, and we really lean into that. So I think for me, it's acknowledging the deep roots that our business has, and the more traditional roots that the business has, but it's not living in the past. We're not trying to be this really old school, everything's done traditional sort of brewery. We are trying to present things in a contemporary manner. So if you think about our biggest selling beer is Three Swords, which is a cask beer, right? And if you look at the design that we have for that, the design is quite a traditional design, but the beer itself is actually made with more modern American hops, for example. So you get this more modern take on cask beer, which is really popular. It's really fresh. And that's what's driven a lot of its success, but it also plays on the fact that it's sort of badged up as quite a traditional and heritage beer. The Three Swords is a really big part of sort of the Kirkstall history and heritage, and that it was like the Three Swords were sort of on the emblems and the coat of arms for for old Kirkstall back in the day. So it kind of plays on that, and I think we have occasions. So we have occasions where we'll double down on our heritage. So we have our traditional prize ales that we do, and our great exhibition of beer that we sort of do as an event every year. And we will really, really dig down into the archives and find some really cool old pump clips, and we'll everything there will be, this is real, this is pure tradition that we're doing here. But then we'll also do more modern stuff. So we obviously have our keg and our can range, and keg and can by its invention is a more modern concept, right? And it's the branding within those. It's really key that there's still a bit of a nod back to the tradition and the heritage, and that probably mostly comes from within sort of the K lookup that we have, which is a bit more traditional. But the beers themselves in that style that we do are more modern beers, and that's us sort of leaning more into the more contemporary side of things. So we kind of offer things across the sort of spectrum at Kirkstall, but I think the balance position that we have is, it's more of a more contemporary modern offering, but with a nod to our historic roots, but not purely playing off and everything has to be traditional. That's our sort of standard position on when we do something.
That's the foundation for it. And I'm curious to know how much of that inspiration or how to position and structure you've been able to pull and was influenced by what you did with Mash Gang, because like you say, it's not a cult, it's a gang. I've heard Jordan describe the brand as like, it's, if it were a party, you would have turned up and it would have already been absolute chaos before you've even walked through the door. So what did you learn during your time at Mash Gang where you've gone, right, I see what we've done here, or this is what I brought in, and we now need to bring this into Kirkstall? Because it's two very different brands, well, from a public perception anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what they're producing, very, very different. The branding, very, very different on them. I think the Mash Gang thing was really interesting, because I think why Mash Gang did well was because it was authentic, and what you saw with Mash Gang was what you got. And I wasn't there from the very start. I joined after about a year, just before we really went on the big growth sort of growth curve that we did. And I don't think that was anything to do with me joining. I think it was just the way that things went. But I think everything was really authentic, and it was pretty much just a group of 4 or 5 people saying what they thought was cool and going off and doing it, and doing what we thought we'd like, and therefore we thought other people would like. And we did some mad shit as well. We did things that were out there, and that was really great, things that got us noticed. And I think those are sort of things that probably wouldn't work as well at Kirkstall. We do some stuff that stands out there, but not to the extent that Mash Gang did. It's a very different thing to that. But I think the lesson on authenticity is really key, and I think that's something that we really try to be at Kirkstall. Is, we try to we're not trying to pretend to be someone else. We're just doing what we think is what we like and what others will therefore like. I think the thing with Mash Gang, I wanted to be involved because I thought it was cool, because I was this 30-odd-year-old accountant dad at home who found this beer with a cool skeleton on the side of it, and I wanted to be part of that. So when I had the opportunity, I was jumping at it basically, and I really liked, and I think people really, really liked that. That we engaged with people a lot at Mash Gang as well. So we made a huge effort to make sure that if anyone left a comment on socials, it would be responded to. If anyone sent us a DM, we would respond to it. If there was a problem with someone's ordered, we would make good on it. There was that relentless focus on the customer. So although we were doing stuff that we thought was cool, it was stuff that we thought was good and cool, but we also therefore thought that our followers of the brand would enjoy as well. And we did get this real cult following, really. And we created a Discord channel eventually, which was great, and that filled up with people, fans of Mash Gang, who were literally. It was amazing to see them sort of fanboying and fangirling over Mash Gang in a Discord group at Mash Gang, and we would just sit and watch them have conversation, interact with them even more, and we had this loyal army of fans who would protect the brand at all costs if anyone said anything horrible about it, which at the time a lot of people said bad things about non-alcoholic beer, and they would go and defend them. I don't think you quite get as much of that now, which is nice. But it was kind of great to have this army mobilized. I remember we did a collab with Northern Monk in a supermarket SKU, and we sort of assembled an army of people to go into the stores and make sure it had a good enough rate of sale and stuff. And they were really, really happy to do that. We used to do stuff like we did a QVC sort of internet shopping thing on a Saturday, and we would just buy a load of cheap crap from the internet, really, really horrible tat, and get it branded as Mash Gang and stuff, like necklaces with Mash Gang stuff, and we would then sell it off on QVC on the weekend on this video call. It was great. And the power that we had with our audience then, and the level of fandom that we had, was quite hard to believe, really. But I think people just wanted a piece of the authenticity that we were putting out there. And we created a subscription box, and within a couple of months we had 400 people on this subscription box, and we had to turn it off because we couldn't make enough beer in the small batch to do it anymore. Then we realized that we had got our pricing wrong on it. Hold my hands up on that. And we were making a loss on it. So we had to add another £5 onto it every month, and no one batted an eyelid. We thought we were going to lose a load of customers. People were like, "Oh yeah, I thought it was a bit too cheap, to be honest. More than happy to pay it." And getting to that level of community is key, and getting to that level of people who really just see the value in what you're doing, I think is really, really key. And I think that's one thing that I'm trying to bring a bit more to Kirkstall as well, is that experience of more of a direct to consumer channel. Which probably we didn't quite do as much of at Kirkstall before. So that's really grown for us now. But that wider community feel is really important for Kirkstall as well. We are now we're in national markets in the UK, but we do have our homeland, which is Leeds in particular, and sort of the wider Yorkshire market. And I think that's a really, really good platform to build a community on. And that community definitely exists. There are, similar to Mash Gang, there is a lot of people in the Leeds market who are really passionate about Kirkstall, and rightly so, because the beer's fantastic. But there are a lot of people who, when I announced I was joining, the level of interaction I had with that LinkedIn post was like nothing I've ever seen before. Mainly because I've never usually got anything interesting to say. But the people who were coming up to me and saying, "I can't believe you're going to that brewery. This is my absolute favorite. I absolutely love it. This is great." And to see that sort of people reflecting on what I'm doing and, you know, expressing how they feel about that brand in the local market. Because I'm from Leeds originally, you know, I'm born and bred in Leeds, so a lot of my friends are from the area as well. So it was really interesting to see people just be so passionate about it. And that's when, you know, I was pretty confident I'd made the right decision in taking the role. But harnessing that again and making sure that the brand is strong enough that we have to, you know, continue attracting people into that. And really build that community of people that believe in the brand, will defend the brand at all costs. So you don't have to spend all your time defending it. We'll advocate the brand and get you into new places. You know, I think that's the power of community, really. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Mashgang taught me.
But that's, to me, that sounds like quite a challenging proposition to bring into an environment. So now that you're joining Kirkstall, like, you use the word authenticity, and I'm of the opinion that if you have to say you're authentic, then you're potentially not authentic because it's being used as some kind of marketing or branding positioning.
Yeah.
So how, you know, being a newcomer into the Kirkstall environment, how are you getting people together to go, yeah, this is what we are, this is what authentic genuinely means, and being confident that people can get behind it?
Yeah, well, I think there's certainly no issue with people getting behind the authenticity, because I think fortunately that already existed. But like you say, yeah, like first rule of authenticity: don't say you're authentic, and because people just think it's a marketing play. And often I think you see, you know, the people who shout the loudest often are the least authentic. To be honest, is my take on it. You know, I think I've never really been one for like massively over shouting about achievements and over promoting, because I think it can come off badly sometimes. And I often see businesses that have shouted about how great things are for them, and then it's turned out that's not really the case. And I think there's a level of humble and maybe modesty, which is more my style, to be honest. But I can probably be accused of not shouting enough about things as well sometimes. So it's getting that balance right. But in terms of steps you can take to build your community or show how authentic you are, I think it's actually just continuing to operate in the way that feels right to you as a business, and doing the things that are right. So, I mean, you can build a community without going out and saying, "Oh, we're really authentic. Please be in our community." You can, you know, start to introduce things into your mailing list, for example. So instead of just emailing people saying, "This is what's for sale this week. Please buy our beer," you can introduce people more to what's actually going on in the business at the moment. What's happening? What are the people in the business doing? If you're interested in it, read this bit. This is what we've been doing recently. And again, that's something that was done really well at Mashgang. The mailing list wasn't just please buy our beer. It was, here's a look into our lives sort of thing. And I think people sort of felt like, and I certainly did before I joined, and I was just a customer and a fan. It felt like they were just sharing what was, you know, the journey and what was going on with them at the time. And I found that really endearing and easy to engage with. You don't have to read it if you don't want. I think it might have been Wiper and True, where they had like a couple of different mailers, and you could opt to be in one that basically told you about like local events that were happening with them, one that told you about what was happening in the brewery, or one that was just, I just want to be sold to. And giving people those options is always quite interesting as well. Or you just signpost an email. So say, if you don't really care about what's happening in the brewery, don't read this bit. Just come buy the beer above here.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to start with a bit about the brewery. Just flip down to a bit further below if you just want to buy a beer and ignore this. But I think by educating people about what's going on and making people feel like you're not just there just to sell them some beer from a web store, or, you know, sell event tickets, that in itself is quite genuine, I think, because if you really, really want to build people who care about your brand, then you kind of have to be authentic with them, don't you? And you have to, you know, you can send mailing lists, you can do paid advertising saying, buy our beer, and that's one method of sales. But actually, if you want to build sustainable and sustained demand, I think that's where building people who genuinely are fanatical about your business and building a community is key. And it's maybe a bit of a longer term play, but I think it's pretty important.
And I suppose in many ways, like if you want people to be passionate about the brand that you're building, then they need to know about the brand.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to be like, yes, I'm passionate about their beer, but like, what's the story behind it? I know the people, I know the faces. Otherwise, it is like you say, it's just this commodity that you're passing between. It's faceless, it's transactional. So I completely see where you're coming from, man. And well done. You managed to really circumnavigate that authentic word quite successfully there. Hats off to you. I want a step change because obviously knowing your finance accountancy background stuff side of things, I need you to help solve one of my problems, which is the ROI justification on branding. Because I have the ways that I describe this to clients and breweries that I work with, but obviously you're a big advocate for getting a brand and getting a message and getting alignment on it. So when it comes to the financial justification, how do you have that conversation, and what's your interpretation of the return of investment on branding?
It's difficult. Brand is intangible. It's quite hard to measure, really. And as someone who has worked in a marketing agency before and sort of been on that side of a table where we're having to tell clients like you can't exactly measure this, to being the accountant early in my career who would question all marketing spend because I didn't really understand it at the time and be like, how can we possibly be spending that? Now, spoiler alert, some of it we definitely shouldn't have been spending actually, but some, I was looking for, well, what's my return on that? In pounds and pence, what am I getting back for that? But you can't measure. It's really hard to measure unless you're a massive, massive brand and you're willing to spend a lot of money on it. I think it's quite hard to measure what sales are coming from your brand because it's not like you're asking everyone who buys from you, or what, why are you buying this beer? Oh, because I really like your brand. That's not how it works. And for example, if I do some paid advertising, but I've also spent some money on brand, and someone sees my paid advert, but because of my brand, they recognize me, and then they go through the paid advert, what am I attributing that to? I'm attributing that to paid, but actually, and this is a problem, I'm going off on a tangent on paid here. I'll just come back.
You loop it back around.
A lot of paid is actually work you've done elsewhere, but converting. But I think what can you do? I mean, brand, I always think of brand as sort of like the moat that you're building around your business to protect it. So, as long as you're spending in the right areas, but the deeper and wider you can build that, the more protected you are. But how do you measure what you're getting back from that is very, very difficult. I think the flip of that, I say, is you're better off having, if you can, hire someone with experience in that area who's done that before, knows sort of what lands well. Now, they can't necessarily tell you what returns well, because I don't think anyone really can easily define what an ROI in a brand is. But someone who knows that, I've done this before, it didn't work. I've done this before, it works really well. If you can't afford to have someone full time, get someone external in. If you can't afford that, though, time. The thing about ROI is investment is not just financial in your brand. Like, actually, probably your biggest investment piece is time. Mm-hmm. And that's the other reason why you can't necessarily look at your return, because anyone can actually spend time on their business and on their brand. So you can spend time responding to, even if you're a one-man band, you can spend your time responding to every follower that you gain on social media, creating a mailing list and emailing them, looking at your sort of return customers and doing things for them. Anyone can do those sort of things, making sure that you've got consistent brand guidelines. Any one man business, one woman business can do that. And that's still investing time. It's not necessarily money. You can still build brand without spending money on it. But you can also start to look at non-financial measures to look at your return as well. So I guess you could look at track signs of brand health. So are your followers growing on social media, for example? You can look at your cohort analysis if you're using Shopify or other platforms to see how many of your customers are actually returning customers. Are you getting a lot of first-time customers? If you're using paid, strip out your paid, is your organic demand going up or down? That's usually a good sign of your brand. How much direct traffic are you getting onto your website at the moment? Where is that? Where is your traffic coming from? I think there's a lot of different things that you can sort of do. Like how much are you relying on promoting and discounting to move the needle in your business? I think all of those are quite, like, if you understand what drives those and the interaction with brand on those things, I think you can look at those metrics for if your brand is traveling in the right direction or not. And I think that's probably a better reflection of the ROI on it, even if it's not, pounds and pence and a payback period over a period of time. And brand obviously doesn't happen overnight as well. It's a continuously growing thing.
And I suppose you're saying about, everyone can put time into it, but there's still a cost to time. It's like, if you're going to be focusing on that, what are you not doing? And is the cost of not doing that higher than the cost of doing, the branding or the marketing side of things? So it's tricky, but it is possible. I love that moat analogy. I'm definitely going to be stealing that one. Cheers, mate.
I saw it with someone else, so yeah, you're welcome to it.
There we go. It's just aggressive theft left, right, and centre in this industry.
It is. I think it's worth saying though, Tim, as well, that having gone through a business sale myself, brand is one of those things that really is taken into account. And if you are looking to sell your business, brand is a really big multiplier on your valuation of your business as well. Like, you can look at the financials of it, but actually there is a lot to be added into sort of the formula for how much anyone's willing to buy your business for, should you be so inclined to sell it. That brand really factors heavily into that. And again, it's kind of a funny one, because again, it's not something that you can really just easily just value. But a stronger brand, and if you can prove that you've got stronger metrics versus competitors and stuff like that, that will drive the valuation of your business up as well.
I think there's the soundbite for the show right there. I'll steal that one. That's great. So last question, Roger, because my observation is you've got kind of like old guard and new guard when it comes to the brewing world, and it's not a negative to be said about either of them, but because you are a fresher face to the industry, what is your observation on what's changing, and what do you see for kind of the future of brewing and its position in culture these days?
Yeah, I think unfortunately the romantic days of the sort of craft beer boom are at their operational maturity now, is maybe the best way of phrasing it. I think it's harder to sell your beer now just because you're an independently owned craft brewery, whereas maybe, well, certainly 10 years ago, I think that was the golden era. It was a lot of people, craft beer nerds, whatever, maybe because there wasn't as much choice when you did get to a bar, but if there was something that was labeled as independent craft, I think it was quite a popular decision to opt for that. The marketplace is a lot more crowded with that now, which is a fantastic thing. Obviously, it means that everyone has more choice and more options for good beer. But I think sometimes there can be a bit of an attitude of, oh, well, I'm independently owned, that means that my beer must be more desirable than the macro on the tap next to it. And that's just not the case, in my opinion. I think there are breweries that were purchased by larger breweries and still have good offerings out in the market now, and more they still have the appearance of the craft brands that they once were. It's more difficult than ever for people to decipher what is independent and not independent at the bar. Do people really care? I still think some people do, but I don't think quite as many people do as what I'd like to believe myself, probably. And I think what it really does come down to is the appeal. So firstly, the visual appeal to people and making sure that you jump out at people, but then backing it up with the quality and the experience that they have with that beer, so that they come back time and time again. Now, in theory, that's always been the case, but I think it's more important there now, because it is more competitive than ever. And I think we are seeing more of the larger macro breweries really continue their sort of pursuit to take more share of the area again. There's new parts of the market as well. So like Jabel with the fruit beer and stuff now. There's whole new categories which are going on. So yeah, I think times are always changing. I think it's certainly not easier these days than it would have been even 5 years ago. Probably before COVID. Probably that's a long time ago. It is harder now, I think, but the concepts still remain the same. Everyone should really be striving to create the best beer that they can, that appeals to probably the most people.
Yep, play the numbers game, right? Good beer, lots of people, can't go wrong that way.
Can't go wrong.
So Roger, my man, where can people keep up to date with what you're doing yourself, but equally the work that you're doing with Kirkstall? Because I'm sure there's going to be loads of people who are fascinated to watch what's happening.
Yeah, I'm trying to post a little more on LinkedIn at the moment. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me there, and I try and keep the updates non-braggy if possible. So you probably will see hopefully a bit more realism and factual posts of what we're actually doing. The accountants beyond the world, maybe it won't be all singing, dancing. I don't use emojis in my posts. If anyone's expecting that, you'll be disappointed. But yeah, you can follow Kirkstall on socials as well. For anyone in the Leeds area, we also have several pubs, so come down and visit those too. But yeah, you can check out our website for that. I don't have a personal website. Maybe I should think about making one. But for now, yeah, the best place to catch me is probably on LinkedIn. Is my natural habitat.
Your digital habitat. Find you on LinkedIn, ask you a question, or indeed just view the post that will not
join our mailing list at Kirkstall as well. We are sharing more about what we're doing there too.
Well, as we said earlier on, that's how you get to know the people behind the beer, right?
Shameless plug, yeah.
You'll see it in action. Dude, talking of shameless plugs, and thank you so much for the segue, I need to shout about one last time, because my book launches on Monday next week. That is the 1st of December for those of you listening now, or listening to this before the 1st of December, listening to this after the 1st of December. It's already going to be available. Get to Amazon. Branding for Breweries, 20 years of my branding knowledge and experience combined into 140 little white pages for your joy and enjoyment, and things that will hopefully distill a lot of the stuff that Roger was talking about, like what is your vision and values. There's loads of guides and exercises and bits and bobs people can do. Anyway, that's enough about me there. That was good.
It's on my Christmas list.
What's that?
It's on my Christmas list, Tim.
Yeah, get involved. At least we've got one sale in there. Happy days. Roger, my man, thank you so much for spending time chatting to me today, bud. It was really interesting to just talk it all through, this idea of structure, what authenticity means, bringing that community angle in as well. And those little snippets that you dropped on in there are going to be really, really helpful for the listeners. So thanks once again, my man.
Thanks for having me.
No stress. And thank you everyone who's listened or will be listening in the future. Until next time, have a wicked day, everyone. Rock on. That's a wrap on this week's episode of Branding for Breweries. If you got something great from it, hit follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite streaming app. Or even better, leave a review, share it with your brewery pals, or get in touch, because I want to chat to you. Rock on!